any impartial observer can see about Trump is he really likes number go up and he likes being credited for number going up. If you're saying that there will be no large crashes in Bitcoin ever again, you're also saying that there will be no periods of mania with blow off tops ever again. Navigating a bull market, if you go to the bathroom for 5 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever, you might come back and there'll be another $4 or $5 million of exposure to your position. I just hope more and more people realize that there is a way to save now that doesn't require being a hedge fund manager.
Savings is the thing, and that is what Fiat has destroyed to the point where everyone's a gambler.
And now I realize that almost all of sports is fueled by gambling, almost exclusively. Like all the media content is not about what's this interesting in-depth interview about this athlete as a person. No, it's like the injury report so that somebody can change their fantasy football lineup. There's only one entity on the planet that can really make things ugly and dark for Bitcoin and Bitcoiners. It's only the State Department of the United States.
Cory, welcome back to the Bitcoin Infinity Show. Thank you for joining us again.
It's great to be here. Hey, Knut, Luke, let's go. I love it.
Let's go. Let's go, Cory. First of all, thank you very much for taking me to Istanbul a couple of months back. Like I enjoyed that immensely. We went to a little Bitcoin meetup there and had some fun times. I got to try a proper kebab without the sauces. I hear that's like how they do them in Istanbul. I recently saw a cooking YouTube clip where some guy was trying to make proper kebab, and Istanbul is a special place. Let's just say that.
The seasoning is already on the meat when they cook it. That's the whole point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's been marinated.
Man, it feels like that dinner just ended. That was a marathon.
Yeah. It was intense for sure, and but what a beautiful place. People everywhere, but nice people. I mean, Istanbul is special. Sure, it's truly as a bridge between the East and West.
Yeah, it really is. I try to describe to people who haven't been there what it's kind of like, and because a lot of people have been to Rome and how cool it is to see the old mixed with the new, because they're buildings from 2,000, 2,500 years ago, things like that. Well, Istanbul is like that because it's a city that's been there for millennia, and there are buildings there that date to 400 or 500 BC, and then everything since. Except Rome is like maybe fewer than 2 million people, and it's not a commercial center. And Istanbul has 18 million people, the same as the New York metro area, or the same as basically all of LA County. And it's all just plopped right on top of all that ancient architecture. And so it's this bustling metropolis. It's the biggest city in the world for 3/4 of the years since Christ. And, there's no other major city that compares for 1,000 miles in any direction. And it's different. Istanbul is built different.
No, it's truly special. I mean, the traffic is horrible, but other than that, it's
don't
great.
drive anywhere.
And I still think you should change it back to Miklagård, not Constantinople. Miklagård is the proper name, right? Right, Luke?
Is that what the Vikings that came down and hung out for a little bit called it?
Yeah. They came down and hung out for a little bit. That's exactly what they did. No, great. All right. So I think for most of our listeners probably know you since before, and if they don't, shame on them. But I think a lot of people would like to hear whatever beans you can spill on the whole Swan story thing. Like can you give us an update on Swan, where Swan is at the moment and what's going on?
Yeah, sure. So on the financial services side, kind of the wealth platform for H&Ws and families and stuff, like this is all crushing and doing great, as you can imagine in a budding bull market. So revenue's up something like 2x year over year. And very, very happy with that. Rolling out new products. We've got a wait list coming out for a pretty awesome product that a lot of people are excited about. So that'll come out next week, the week of the 16th of December. And then, just growing fast and navigating a bull market. You got a tiger by the tail in this situation. Phone's kind of ringing off the hook, and all the sales guys are busy all the time, as you can imagine. So you just don't want to mess it up when you have these kinds of tailwinds. And then I think you're probably also asking about mining, because we not our own decision to get out of the mining business back in August. It was somebody else's decision to take our mining business. Unfortunately, I can't really talk about it. What's in public is in the filings and covered by the press, but the rest is just working its way through the courts. But obviously, we built a really valuable business, and we have pretty strong claims over the value that we delivered, and we'll see how it plays out. But it's really just kind of a separate thing now that's just, managed basically outside the main business of Swan and doesn't really affect us.
Okay, so business as usual on the normal Swan side, so to speak.
Yeah, all well. Love the partners we have. Big fan of Equity Trust, which is a 50-year-old company that kind of created the alternative assets in retirement accounts category. So they're credible and huge, and that's got our retirement accounts now, which is awesome. Backed is handling brokerage, which is a much better tech platform and much deeper pockets. They're majority owned by ICE, which owns New York Stock Exchange, and like chairman of ICE is Kelly Loeffler's husband, and she's now the head of the Small Business Administration under Trump. So they're connected. They've got New York. They've got, it's a much better platform. We've got limit orders coming for everybody. A lot of people wanted that. We'll have interest-bearing accounts for USD deposits paid in Bitcoin, the same as what River announced a few months ago. So we should have that in the next few months as well. So I just think there's a lot of cool stuff coming. Working on getting into asset-backed loans for all 50 states in the first half of 2024. So just kind of product expansion with better partners as this whole, crypto infrastructure space, all the vendors that serve Bitcoin companies are getting better, maturing, getting rid of the bad players that weren't very good, things like that. So it just kind of allows us to be the point of contact for families and businesses looking to build wealth in Bitcoin. They end up needing a lot of different products and services that they want serviced by Bitcoin experts, because their private wealth management guy doesn't speak this language and doesn't understand Bitcoin, and we do.
He doesn't speak C++. Is that is that the language? Anyway, I think we had a conversation about this in Istanbul, about like the equities, the ETFs, all the paper Bitcoins that the big exchanges may or may not have, strategic Bitcoin reserves for nation states, and all of this stuff. And I remember you saying like the conclusion of the conversation we had was sort of like all roads lead to Bitcoin, like this black hole phenomenon that where's the wealth going to go? It can only go to Bitcoin in the end. Like, can you expand on that a bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true, and we've seen it being borne out over the last few years. And Bitcoin's growth story, which, by the way, I think will continue even past the point where volatility is dramatically reduced. So in a few decades, when we're not still experiencing, price booms and busts, I think the growth rate of Bitcoin will still be the best risk-adjusted return for any major asset class out there for quite some time. Eventually, maybe end of the century or something, will be finally surpassed again by businesses building value with Bitcoin as the risk-free rate, this Bitcoin's purchasing power increase as the risk-free rate that they've got to hurdle over. But until then, any instrument, any business, any bond offering, any stock offering, you have to really consider whether it's made better, and that means is the risk reward better by leveraging Bitcoin for it. So this is what we see with multiple companies now. In November was kind of an explosion of more companies issuing large convertible debt offerings. So not just MicroStrategy. You had $2 billion offerings from Marathon. Both of them were actually scheduled for less than $1 billion and ended up getting oversubscribed. Then you had Hut do a $500 million offer, and then you had Riot do. They offered 500, ended up oversubscribing to 525. And then you have the smaller guys that aren't doing convertible debt because they don't have the size and the liquidity to do the convertible offerings, but they're continuing to do the stock offerings, right? So that's similar. Some of these smaller players like the Meta Planets and stuff are doing these stock offerings, and they're using the same logic that MicroStrategy is promoting about, essentially this MNAV, this multiplier to your net asset value. And if that's high, it's accretive to issue stock and buy Bitcoin with it. And that then flows through to your balance sheet. You don't recognize it as earnings, but in some ways, there's an argument to be said that it kind of is, because what's the point of earnings in the first place? Earnings accrete to the assets on your balance sheet. That's the whole point, right? So you're just kind of skipping a step and you're not flowing it through the business. You're just beefing up your balance sheet by playing this arb between the value of your stock and its premium over your Bitcoin holdings. So it is super fascinating. And then these convert buyers are seeing returns that they've never seen in their markets. They're also seeing volatility like they've never seen. So I've been talking to a lot of the folks. I mean, we had a big Wall Street firm convert desk out with us on Monday with some of our clients and partners, and just kind of picking their brains. And anybody that shows up on a podcast and seems eloquent about this, I'll grab them and grab a quick conversation with them. Sometimes I'm just using the freaking audio call function on Twitter, and I'll just call somebody that seems like they said something intelligent. They pick up, and all of a sudden you're driving around LA talking to some rando in Switzerland or something. Yeah, it is roiling markets. It is making a whole different class of investor. Obviously the kind of day-to-day stock punters that you see on Twitter, but an entire swath of Wall Street, and I'm assuming London as well, now has to pay attention to this, because it's changing what they do. And they have to, like, I was listening to Richard Byworth, who's a smart former convert trader who's been in the Bitcoin space for a while. I think he's on the board of Relay over in Europe, in Switzerland. And he was talking to one of his convert trader friends, and it's like, that guy can't go to the bathroom anymore during the day. Like you can't leave your desk, because you have to be there monitoring your delta hedges and your gamma hedges and all this shit. And like if you go to the bathroom for 5 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever, you might come back and there'll be another, $4 or $5 million of exposure to your position, because it's moving around so fast. And that is traditionally more of a not boring. I mean, it's exciting for bonds. Converts are more interesting because they have an option in them. But yeah, it's a different ballgame for these guys now. And the buzz, when I was in New York the early part of this week, and the buzz around this, and the curiosity and the number of people that will come out to come and chat about it, or clear time in their schedule to just kind of talk about Bitcoin, because Bitcoin has now crossed over into their world. It didn't really cross over that way with the ETFs. A few firms have ETF departments, and they added Bitcoin, and it was the same buyers of Bitcoin that, usually were there. A few more people were able to get exposure to it, but it's basically 1x long. And, mostly the leverage and the options on the ETFs is, again, kind of for asset managers. It wasn't like a different asset class the way that the crossover has been into the debt markets. So there's just it's a different energy that conversation is bringing.
Absolutely. And like, let's see if I can break this down to try to explain it to maybe not a 5-year-old, but an 11-year-old, and see if I got it right. And feel free to correct me at any point here. But if I was to explain what MicroStrategy is doing to an 11-year-old, I would say that they know that there's a thing that's going down in value, and there's a thing that's going up in value, and they're trying to get rid of the one that is going down and accumulate as much as possible of the one going up. Now they have a lot of money, so they can get cheap loans because they can use their equity as collateral. Is that right? Like that's how they.
So it's close. I think on the first point, what they're arbitraging is the cheap cost of credit. So loans
Yeah.
are artificially kept low, which makes sense because governments are wildly indebted. And so they artificially keep interest rates low so that they can afford to pay their debts.
Yeah, they're basically using the Cantillon effect to their
Yes.
advantage here.
Yes.
So and the reason that they can pay their interests, because it's not zero and it's not negative, is that they have like $400 million of profit from their core business a year or something like that, right?
They do have profits, but at this point, it's also almost irrelevant because the interest payments are not high. They've issued all their recent convertible debt offerings have had 0% coupons. So, I think they've got one big offering at 2.2% and another one at 0.87%, and the rest are at 0. And
okay.
And basically what slides is if you have if you have a higher interest rate, then you can put the strike price on the convert higher as well. If you have a lower interest rate, you have to lower the strike price. So they've basically made the trade-off of saying, okay, we'll take that slightly lower strike price, and therefore you, investor in the convertible bond, have a better chance of being in the money when this converts to stock, in exchange for not paying interest as they go.
All right. So if we extrapolate this and see try to predict the future here, and we try to envision like 1,000 MicroStrategies trying to do exactly the same thing, is it an infinite game? Is like this the infinite money glitch? Can they do this forever? Like my argument against the MicroStrategy fanboys here is, just to play the devil's advocate, is that the underlying asset is, of course, the risk-free version of MicroStrategy stock, because at some point Michael can change his mind and just sell everything. Like that can still happen. Like, and you don't have that risk if you hold your own keys. Like this, except that you can change your mind. You can time lock them, and doesn't even matter if you change your mind. So how long can this game go on? Like, is this the beginning of the end of Fiat in general? Like, can they just Cantillon the fuck out of this thing, and then if Fiat just dies at one point because everyone is playing this game?
Look, this is the speculative attack, right? This, by the way, this is institutions coming. ETFs were not. ETFs was like a way for people to buy more Bitcoin, and it's 1 for 1. And like it was like a step. The sea change that's happened really in the last month, just since the beginning of November. And I think the real signal is probably that another company was able to do a large convert offering. So when you saw Marathon able to do 1 and then 2, by the way, on the back of losing 134 million in Q3, and the market still snapped up their convertible offerings like crazy. And then you saw Hut and Riot be able to do the same thing. And it's just math. Like there's these stocks have volatility, and there's an embedded call option in a convertible debt instrument. And you can price it. And if they offer it at less than what the banker's spreadsheet, or the buyer, Allianz, bought a quarter of one of MicroStrategy's convert offerings, if in their spreadsheet it says this is a good deal, then they buy it. And that's it. It's just math. So look, there will be a local top for this. There will be some kind of mania where it gets overbought and they get overextended for sure. That's guaranteed, because that's just how markets develop. So there will be some kind of, LBE mania at some point, probably in 2025, and it'll probably be part of what causes a blow off top in the Bitcoin price, which means we will probably have a crash. I'm not a no more big crashes, because if you're saying that there will be no large crashes in Bitcoin ever again, you're also saying that there will be no periods of mania with blow off tops ever again. But so I will say, like, if there's not a point in 2025 where we go up 2x in a month, then maybe we have a shot at not having a big crash. But if we go to 150 or 200 and then at 2x's in 4 weeks, that's the mania. And there'll probably be a bunch of crappy companies issuing convertible bonds, and the market's still snapping them up. And those people are all going to lose their shit, because they don't have the kind of leverage ratios and the size and the liquidity that MicroStrategy has, or they have businesses that lose money instead of make money, things like that, right? So, it's the most easily identifiable risk for both what will cause a mania and what will cause a large pullback is this. And it won't be because of MicroStrategy. It'll be because of a lot of shitty companies copying them. And it'll be a bunch of unsophisticated players that don't understand the difference between this convertible debt offering and that convertible debt offering, plowing a bunch of money into this, thinking that it's a money glitch if you do it right. It's not always a money glitch. And then I wanted to just get back to, what you were saying, like, I've been using the term like your sovereignty multiple. So basically, how much more valuable is Bitcoin in cold storage than another asset, whether it's Bitcoin linked or whatever that's not in cold storage? And like, I've run polls on this. I think people, based on what I see in behavior, I think they probably slant the polls a little bit, but it usually comes out that all the answers are in the 5 to 10x range. I do think that broadly Bitcoiners assign something like a 50 to 100% premium. So like 1.5x to 2x. Now that's not the super freedom-minded people, like it's near infinite, right? And people that don't trust the system or people that have been debanked before, like, there are people that skew that. But I think the mean is something like a 50 to 100% premium over value held in the system. And I'm sure that's colored by me being in the US, and it's dramatically higher for people in Lebanon and Turkey and other places, right? But you need to discount the value and the expected returns of any instrument that's not fucking Bitcoin. And I don't think a lot of people are doing that. I see a lot of people that don't understand Bitcoin whatsoever and haven't done the work to understand what it means to actually have value completely outside of the system. And they haven't really thought through and quantified that. And I think it's a really good vector for education in the coming months, and having that proof of work and putting that education out over the next 6 months or 12 months before what will probably be a debt speculation mania in 2025 at some point. It'll be nice to already have everything you can point to about how, okay, well, here's all these resources. Remember self-custody, but specifically, this is how much more valuable, and having frameworks and models behind why self-custody Bitcoin is so much more valuable than paper Bitcoin or Bitcoin linked anything.
Yeah, so I see it as like a bank account is really a 2 out of 3 multisig between you, the bank, and the government. Mm-hmm. So the ratio is how much do you trust yourself in comparison to that 2 out of 3 multisig. That's the two you're comparing. So how much do you trust your own brain, and how much do you trust the government, basically?
Yep, I agree. Yep.
And I think like for the US, you say like 1.5 for the US. It sort of makes sense because like the US is not, it's printing money like mad, but it can because it's the master money printer. So it's taking advantage of all the other money printers out there in that sense. Yeah. And it's also not freezing assets just randomly that often, right? In that sense, you can sort of trust the banking system to a larger extent than you can the Turkish banking system, I guess. Like, just to take an example.
Yeah, and people feel like, to some degree, people feel like they have recourse, that you can go after it with, a decent lawyer and go seek some justice. Or, as you've seen with the election cycle here, it's kind of self-correcting. So whether or not you believe there was a mass wave of debanking, the people that wanted to push that narrative that there was were able to go and, basically influence DC and kind of take over in a legal election process with legal campaign donations and legal lobbying, and essentially legalize scambling forever in America.
Hello there. You should use code Infinity like everywhere on the internet. For instance, for the MicroStrategy Bitcoin for Corporations conference. For BTC Prague, for BTC Hell, come to Helsinki in August. And make sure to check out Stamp Seed, which is a fantastic little seed plate. You can get the Infinity over 21 million special plates that we collaborated with them in making. Use code Infinity for a discount. Same thing goes for our favorite hardware wallet, the Bitbox 02. Go to bitbox.swiss to get that. The Bitcoin Advisor for Bitcoin inheritance planning and so on and so forth. And the general advice, bitcoinadvisor.com. And make sure to like, subscribe, and brush your teeth and all that. Go to bitcoininfinity.com and get some stuff and some books. Great to have you here.
Yeah. So how much do you think the election, like how much of this recent bull run is because of these Bitcoin leveraged equities, and how much is because of the election? Like Trump was taking credit for the whole thing, I saw, but like,
well, they're intertwined. Like I think the red wave, and then also, I mean, remember there were a bunch of crypto backed Democrats that won their races as well. Because it just doesn't take that much money to sway a House race for the most part, unless you're going after somebody that chairs a committee or, you know, Speaker of the House or something like that. Like a few $100,000 or $1 million will completely change that race in, you know, some district in Iowa or something like that. And, you know, so they basically went after candidates on both sides. This was like the Coinbase and Andreessen Horowitz and basically all the crypto cabal people backed a bunch of candidates on both sides that would play ball with the crypto guys and get them out of jail free. And it was an 85% success rate. 85% of the candidates that were backed by the crypto PACs won. And so it basically took over Congress and the White House. And, you know, and it is what it is. Like, I think at this point, it's the last battle. And I've been talking about this a lot, you know, frankly, for a year now. Bitcoin has been separated from crypto in the minds of the market, the media, and most investors. Investors that actually have money, they see Bitcoin as like saving and investing, and then crypto is gambling. And so, in just paying attention to like the media landscape, I've had, you know, enough bandwidth the last couple of years after startup mode to start paying attention to basketball again, which is awesome. It ain't the 90s. It's not the Bulls and the Sonics, but you know, the product's pretty good and the players are talented, but all of the advertisement is either crypto or sports gambling. And it's only those two things. And interestingly, I now have a whole different view of like sports media because I work in Bitcoin and observe this other thing called crypto and how they do things. And now I realize that almost all of sports is fueled by gambling. Almost exclusively. Like all the media content is not about, you know, what's this interesting in-depth interview about this athlete as a person. No, it's like the injury report so that somebody can change their fantasy football lineup or, you know, change the third leg in their 7-leg parlay. And it's basically, it's all kind of just a regressive tax on people that are gambling to try to get 10x or 100x ahead on what they're gambling instead of putting a little bit away and saving for the long term. And that's what really is at play. It's basically saving versus gambling is Bitcoin versus crypto and sports gambling in Vegas and Macau and running numbers and all of these things that go back millennia, right? This is not new. We saw people like playing dice in Rome, you know? Well, I wasn't there, but I know they were playing, you know, little gambling games and stuff. And it's just the education of the lower and middle classes that you have a way now to get ahead by just saving a little bit, whatever you can, and putting that into Bitcoin. You know, that's hopefully, I mean, we've seen that more and more people see it that way and that it's working out for them because there was just a massive pleb class that came in like 17, 18, and it's changed their lives since then just by stacking daily or weekly since 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. It's a big boost, and helping them get their parents retired and buying cottages or whatever it is, like it's changing things for people further down the economic ladder, which is beautiful. So I just hope more and more people realize that there is a way to save now that doesn't require being a hedge fund manager, and that doesn't require permission to access. That's the main thing. Like anybody can do it, and that's never existed before. It's got me thinking, by the way, and I think like you basically take that, the big square of the store of value, and it's like, well, Bitcoin's down here, and here's stocks, and here's bonds, and here's real estate and art and all this stuff. And it's like you take that entire 1 quadrillion box, and then you add another 1 quadrillion box next to it, which is that people will store more value instead of wasting it or spending it or gambling it. It won't flow into the earnings of the gambling complex. It will get stored. And so I think we'll actually have a massive expansion, just like, the example of, if Uber was going to take some percentage of the cab market, that kind of sucks. But if they were going to expand dramatically the size of the market, expand the TAM, the total addressable market, well, that's a big business. I saw another example of this just this week on Twitter. It was, God, what was it? It was some kind of, I think it was SOC 2 compliance. So just think about security, right? Like it's important to partners of ours. We work with like registered investment advisors and, wealth managers and shit like that. And they want to know that like, okay, are you guys SOC 2 compliant? This is like security things. And that was really, really expensive. And the total TAM for that annually in the US was like $100 million a year. And a startup was like, well, we're going to do that better. And it was really hard for them to raise because they were like, what, you're going to take 10% share and make $10 million a year? Who cares, right? They make $100 million a year now because they expanded the market dramatically, because people want that credibility of SOC 2. All their partners are asking for it. They just couldn't afford it before it was made easier. And so now we are making, well, not we all, Bitcoin itself, thanks to Satoshi, has made storing value easier. So it's more attractive to store value than to do other things with your value.
No, it's fantastic. And from an Austrian economics perspective, this is the process of civilization, having a lower time preference. That's the delayed gratification, saving up fish in order to save up time to construct a fishing net or a fishing rod to catch more fish per time unit. That is civilization. Savings is the thing, and that is what Fiat has destroyed, to the point where everyone's a gambler, and that is what's destroying civilization. And giving back the ability to save to the people is the process of civilization, like coming back and making us civilized again. And how ironic then that the Bitcoin conference is in Las Vegas this year. But it is low time preference, and that is what this game is all about.
Yeah, I mean, if Bitcoin were a company, I think that conference would have violated its licensing agreement long time ago. But anybody can use it, and that's the beautiful part about it too.
Absolutely, the permissionlessness. Luke, what are your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, I got a little thread here with the security angle when you mentioned SOC 2. This happens to still be my day job is cybersecurity, and a topic that's kind of come up for us a little bit lately is the trade-off that people have to make between security and convenience. And in the Bitcoin context, what that really comes down to is that exchanges are the convenience, but they also provide a layer of security in the sense that the exchanges themselves are basically providing the security unless they get hacked. It's a third party. You have to trust it. But if the exchange is saying that we are secure to a certain extent, then that's something that's a little bit easier than taking full self-custody. And we of course advocate for going the full self-custody rabbit hole, all of that. But it's not necessarily easy, straightforward. have you thought about this challenge in terms of onboarding new people into the ecosystem? If we're going to run into scalability problems, basically with people being able to onboard fully into self-sovereign Bitcoin because of this security convenience issue here?
Yeah, for sure. I think that was a big reason why we bought Spectre back in 2022 and built Swan Vault, which is, it seems pretty clear it's the easiest, simplest, most understandable way to onboard into multi-sig and have self-custody with 2 out of 3. That's just what we hear over and over again by people that have been through that, and lots of other ways to onboard. It's just by far the simplest. And we tried really hard to make it boomer proof, and it's really fucking good. And you've got an amazing team, some of the former Spectre guys, and Reardon code, every day working on this, making it amazing. And it is really, really good. And so we are getting a lot of clients now go straight from their first Bitcoin purchase into a vault, which is awesome. I've always loved the way that Unchained does it, where, every single customer is in a 2 out of 3. Whether they're ready to take 2 of the keys or 1 of the keys is up to them. But the incentive is set up the right way, right? Where I think if you take 2 keys and Unchained holds 1, they don't charge you, or maybe it's like minimal or something. And then if they take 2 keys, so they're because they have to, I think Unchained has 1, and then they have a trust company down the street that holds the other one or something like that. So there's a little charge for that, which totally makes sense. I remain not a fan of, kind of not even having like a legal structure difference. Like I think that's one thing that some people miss about the crypto exchanges is like, once you get over a certain amount of Bitcoin, you're going into Coinbase Vault. Like if you're a Coinbase customer, and that is actually in a trust company. So they own a trust company. Gemini owns a trust company. Bitcoin IRA owns a trust company. So they have segregation of brokerage and custody, which is how the traditional finance world works. And it's what all of their institutional customers require. And so I think that's something that a lot of people miss, that with retirement clients, with wealth manager clients like we have, like they expect and require in their due diligence separation of brokerage and custody. So we can't have it all under one roof unless we were going to have 2 different ways of doing custody. And so we can't do it like River does, and we can't do it like Celsius and FTX did and have brokerage and custody under one roof with that liability of having your commingled funds, in one place, right? And, I think that we have to do a good job of educating why that's better, or just why that's factual and mandated for the client segments that we serve. And, and frankly, the brokerage clients, we're trying to get them all to take self-custody, or at least have like our super elevated mega security custody with BitGo Cold, where they have to do video calls and shit like that. So that's like, mega secure or whatever. And I think, somebody like Unchained doesn't face that because all their clients are in a 2 out of 3, which I fucking love. It's just really hard to scale, right? They have a great smaller set of clients. And then otherwise, if you do the full thing, then you start. So if you're River, then you start to educate people on proof of reserve, and you have to prove sort of publicly where the coins are, and hopefully that will get from, monthly reports to weekly reports to daily reports to real time, or I don't know what the path is to giving people comfort of how their coins are stored. But I do think it, basically bifurcates into people kind of trusting somebody versus trusting themselves to some degree. And that is why I just really like the hand-holding of collaborative custody, and always have. I've just been such a huge fan of Unchained's approach from the very beginning. Back when I was like an advisor and early investor there, I always loved that. And I think that's kind of that's the dominant, theoretically, that's the dominant place to be, is for most people. It can be easy enough that the people that would otherwise just choose full third-party custody, you can get them into collaborative, where you may never get those boomers and sorry, mom and dad, you may never get those people that don't want to take full self-custody to do it.
No, this entire thread is great. The whole collaborative custody thing, we've talked about this a bunch. We're good friends with the guys at the Bitcoin Advisor, Peter Dunworth. They basically offer like an extra layer on top of this. They work with Unchained as well.
Yep.
But they do the hand holding to get people on there basically, and offer service.
By the way, Thea, I like those guys. Thea is another example. Every single person that signs up at Thea, like you're automatically into a multi-sig.
Yeah.
Like I think your phone is a key, and I think they work with the BTC Advisor guys too, and like it's really easy to kind of tee up somebody from Peter's squad as like a key agent or something like that. We talk to those guys too. I love them, and like I think we'll probably figure out how to integrate with that at some point.
No, it's great, and I mean the only reason I mention it is just that they basically they make it one step even easier, the kind of the hand holding of people who want that kind of thing. And I mean, yeah, this sort of mix, it's something that does actually still give you control, but you have help. You have help, something like that. But you touched on something really interesting, and this is the Coinbase custody, the Coinbase vault. And I mean, this is, as I understand it, where the majority of the ETFs, in fact, all but a couple are with Coinbase, basically. And is that a big centralization risk? Do you see this as similar systemically to, well, everything you talked about with the micro strategies and all this? What do you think about this?
It will diversify over time. It was much easier for them to all do just Coinbase initially. I think there are other reputable custodians that are getting pieces of these, and we'll take some of that share in the next year or two. And then I also think that they will be going into multi-sig setups as well if they're not already in. They're probably already in multi-sig. I would guess that MicroStrategy probably is in a multi-sig. With all of their institutional relationships, and I would bet that they probably hold the majority of the keys in those setups too. So shades of gray. It's not all black and white. I remain as I have since the launch of Swan. There's only one entity on the planet that can really make things ugly and dark for Bitcoin and Bitcoiners for some period of time. They'd still lose in the end. But it's only the State Department of the United States. That's the only entity that could coordinate something internationally to make things suck. And I don't think that it's not a risk anytime soon, because we can see the world that we live in and the way that politics are working. So something dramatic would have to change, like a big social change in the US that changes the government and how the government works, for me to really assign a large risk to something like that. And you know what? If they nationalize the coins in 68102 it, just be glad you have self-custody coins, And if they want to take some of the ETF coins, that'll suck for the ETF holders.
Yeah, trying to wrap my head around that. It's one thing that the institution itself has an incentive to do that, but how do we get to a point where all the people in the institution have the incentive to do that? Because at that point they will probably have some exposure to Bitcoin themselves, right? It's very unlikely that they won't, and which means they don't have an incentive to ever pull that off. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's why we think of institutions as being made up of people, and people who come into contact with Bitcoin. Even if they were feds once, they often become crypto GPs within a few years with big bag holdings of Bitcoin.
Yeah, who was that? It was a Greenspan that turned from an Austrian economist to a central banker. It was one of the... Who was it? I don't remember who it was, but the Bitcoin is doing the opposite, is my point. It's turning people from central banking to proper understanding of how human beings work.
Yeah.
So do you think this next 4 years gets us over the hump politically, realistically? Like Trump being in office for 4 years and likely the executive side of the administration isn't at least opposing Bitcoin. So does that actually give us enough time, enough momentum to really not have to worry about this? Because after a certain point, really, is any of this going to matter? What do you think?
You got 23 months. What's going to get done will get done in the next 23 months. And it's a matter of priorities, like, you know, how much is attention going to be on Bitcoin, and how much is it going to be on, you know, Department of Governmental Efficiency, and, you know, rehashing old wounds from various political enemies, things like that. Just depends on where the energy goes. One thing that I think any impartial observer can see about Trump is he really likes number go up, and he likes being credited for number going up. And, you know, the I wouldn't say the whispers, the shouts out of the administration, the incoming administration, are that he really wants to see Bitcoin 150K as soon as possible.
Yeah,
why so bearish, Trump?
I saw Eric Trump in at Bitcoin Mina in Abu Dhabi talking about like he's halfway there, maxi. Like he's still a crypto guy, but still.
Yeah, he
it seems like he gets it. Yeah.
He wasn't speaking from notes. It was pretty extemp. Like he gets what Bitcoin is and talking about it. I mean, it was like that was actually pretty impressive. Somebody sent it to me. I was at the airport last night. I just watched, I don't know how long it was, but I watched a 3-minute clip of it. And I was like, that was actually a lot better than like RFK2's first Bitcoin speech.
Yeah.
Because I mean, first of all, it wasn't written for him by somebody else, which is nice. Or maybe it was, but he delivered it extemp at least. So it was pretty freaking good. Yeah, it's a fascinating time we're entering. But the reason I say 23 months is because there will be a new Congress in 26. Most presidents that are lame duck presidents, essentially, because they can only serve one term. He's not running for re-election. So he basically has the first 2 years to push through anything that he really cares about. And, you know, nothing happens in December, you know, before the new Congress comes in. So it's probably really just through election day in early November of 26 is the time. But something that's on the menu that I really didn't think would be on the menu for another decade is getting rid of cap gains tax in the US, which is by far the number one thing that would change Bitcoin dramatically. It would be a huge step change for Bitcoin. Number go up. It would bring about Bitcoin as a medium of exchange 10 years earlier than whatever your forecasts are. Mine keep getting pushed out. I think I used to talk about maybe we'll see wide medium of exchange by like 2032. Then I think earlier this year I was saying 2035. Now I'm probably like 2038, but it can start happening this decade if you get rid of cap gains tax.
Yeah, and that would be huge to use a Trump word like YUGE, like huge. No, it would be absolutely. I just hope that he doesn't replace taxes with tariffs, but starts removing those two at some point, because like but still, it's everything points to this being. Having a real potential of making some change here, especially I think Trump's kids being so positive. It's not only the guy that spoke in Abu Dhabi, it's also Barron Trump, right? Isn't his name Barron?
Yeah.
The younger one?
And Donnie's making bank off of crypto scams. So, you know, like you have to at least be nice to Bitcoin if you're going to scam in crypto.
Yeah. So yeah, fingers crossed.
And we know Jared, Ivanka's husband, Jared knows a shitload about Bitcoin and owns a ton.
Yeah, and this is the fun part. Like there is a Bitcoiner everywhere, like in every social construct around the world, no matter if it's a head of, if it's like a municipality or a corporation or a football team. There's always one guy that can't shut up about Bitcoin. And that guy keeps being right over and over again. Sooner or later, everyone's going to listen to him.
Guys, what is our identity going forward? If we've won and we can't just be like this misanthrope in the corner, like you don't
No,
get going. Like, do we just get to be normal humans again?
I'm an honorary. I'm an honorary Seattleite. Remember,
Yes,
I wear
that's
that
true.
as a badge. Yeah, so I still have an identity after hyper Bitcoinization.
I like it. Yeah, it is much more pleasant to just be around other people in person. Coming out of COVID, Bitcoin's winning. Everybody's interested. Like it is kind of. Because I had a social professional circle for so long in like West Coast tech and, with venture capital and startup founders and putting on events and going to events and raising money and, investing in companies and all this stuff. And it's like, you get into Bitcoin and it's a completely different set of people with no overlap for all that time. And now it's like everybody's back and you can hang out with them you can get the benefits of reconnecting with your friends and a lot more people that you like to see, but you didn't have the time to keep up with. Like I kept my closest friends, but now like just rolling through New York, like everybody will come out. If you say you're getting together, some Wall Street people and some Bitcoin people and like everybody will come out and they're coming in from, wherever they live with their families now in New Jersey or Brooklyn or downtown or whatever. And they'll meet up for an evening and it's just different. And you're not like bending their ear to talk about Bitcoin. They're there to talk about Bitcoin.
Fantastic. So speaking of, like, what are you looking forward to the most, like this upcoming year here? Like, what?
I mean, from a business standpoint, just executing because we were so fresh and so new. The retail peak for retail buying was like May. The price peak was April of 21 and the retail interest peak was May. And then there was like a leverage scam echo bubble later in the year, basically to pump Solana. So we basically missed it because we were just DCA savings plans for 2020. We started taking wires in like November or December of 2020. We announced the start of Swan Private in January of 21 to handle like big purchases and everything, but it was basically just me and Jan, and there were no salespeople. Actually, Breedlove at one point signed up to be the head of Swan Private, and then decided I think he got a huge pay in advance deal from NYDIG to sponsor his podcast. So he decided to do that instead of work.
Yeah, I remember that.
Reading leather-bound books and everything. So then, I think Steven Lubka, who runs Swan Private, his first full-time day at the company was May 1, after the price peak and the first month of the retail interest peak. And so we weren't actually in market the last bull market, which is crazy. So it's been interesting, just, making sure all your systems are rock solid and that everything works. And, you've got a team that's there and ready to rock and execute. And you don't have the distraction at the executive level of the mining business and associated relationships. So you can focus 100% on, the Bitcoin investors that you serve. And so we are like crushing it and really geared up for a lot more growth and excited to bring more products to market. So from a business side, that's all there. I think on the personal side, it's like, how do you just keep your feet on the ground? Helps to be married to a Turk. That's generally going to do the trick. And having young kids definitely helps as well, because they don't give a shit what's going on at work. But it's almost just deliberately creating a little bit of extra transition time between your work day and home. So I find myself, I'll be like euphoric on the day that, Bitcoin goes through 100K or something. And I'm like, okay, I recognize that I'm probably going to act like an ass around my family right now. So I'm going to go take a walk for 20 minutes and let myself just kind of calm down and be a little more even keel. It's like, just try to be a grown up about this shit.
No, true that. But yeah, it sounds like you did the proper thing a Bitcoiner should do, which is build during a bear market. So it's like Bitcoin is build a bear technology. Like we should get build a bear to accept Bitcoin one of these days. So fantastic. I think we're coming up on the hour here. So
Perfect.
thank you, Cory, for coming back to the show. And like, is there anywhere you would like to send our listeners, internal or external? Like,
I mean, honestly, probably Twitter is the best place. So it's just my full name, Cory Klippsten, on Twitter. On X. So x.com/Cory Klippsten. Generally, if I have anything worth saying, I'll put the whole thing or a version of it on X, and my DMs are open still, I believe. So you can always hit me up there too if you want to chat.
is shitcoin debunking Cory coming back anytime soon, or is there no use for him anymore? Like,
Look. So first off, okay, so this will be the last 1 minute topic because I want to hammer this home. I reject the role of like shitcoin PI because I don't care about average crypto scams. I only ever cared about the ones where they were talking shit about Bitcoin or doing something that I, like in or around Bitcoin that I thought was bad for Bitcoin. So it was Do Kwon with the bullshit Bitcoin treasury, Mashinsky trying to get everybody's Bitcoin for his Ponzi scheme, and SBF, who was talking shit about Bitcoin all the time and just had too much influence that was contrary to Bitcoin. So, those were the ones that I went after. I'm pretty sure you can't meet any of them for a coffee at this point.
so, but you won't spend any time bashing Haktula coin.
I just think it's the last battle, and it just doesn't matter. Like Bitcoin is just so separate from crypto at this point, and Bitcoin is investing and saving, and crypto is gambling, and like just let them play with their crypto games or whatever, and bet on some sports and bet on some meme coins, and it's sad for the people that really can't afford to be doing that, but I got bigger fish to fry, and it's time to just move on and just do much more on the positive side of things, just promoting Bitcoin.
Great to hear. So once again, thanks for coming back, and you're always welcome, as you know. So hope to see you in real life again soon as well.
Yeah, me too. Great to see you guys. Thanks for the time.
Thanks a lot, Cory. This has been the Bitcoin Infinity Show. Thank you for listening.